Snow fell like silent ashes over the broken lands. The sky was pale and heavy. Long ago, this place was filled with life. Green valleys, warm waters, peaceful cities. But after the war, everything changed. The war was not planned. It came like a storm, sudden, loud, and without warning. The humans had arrived on this planet a few years ago. Not as enemies, not as conquerors. They came looking for resources and peace. But some alien leaders didn't trust them. A single mistake led to fire from the skies. Machines screamed, cities vanished, families broke, and cold winter spread like a curse over the world. Among the survivors was a young alien woman named Thaleen. She once lived in a golden house near the river. Her daughter Mira loved dancing under the twin moons. But now they were both hiding in a cave, wrapped in rags, trembling in the snow. Thaleen's skin, once glowing with gentle light, had turned pale with cold. Her arms were tight around Mira, trying to keep the small girl warm. Mira didn't speak much anymore. She was hungry, weak, and scared. Her soft breathing was all Thaleen could hear in the silence of the cave. Every heartbeat felt slower then. The last dot outside, the storm howled. No food, no fire. Just ice, wind, and hopeless waiting. Thaleen's eyes blinked slowly. She had not slept properly in days. She had lost everything, her home, her family, even her hope. She kissed Mira's frozen forehead and whispered, "Just a little longer." Far across the snowy hills, a lone human soldier named Daniel moved through the storm. He had been separated from his unit 3 days ago during a skirmish. Now he was just trying to survive, using his scanner to find any signs of shelter or heat. His mission was no longer war. It was life, his and anyone else's. His helmet beeped softly, a faint heat source nearby. He followed the signal through thick snow until he saw it, a small cave half covered in ice. Something flickered. Inside, not fire, but life. Daniel entered slowly. He lowered his rifle when he saw them. A woman, curled around a child, both shaking. His breath caught. They weren't soldiers. They were just trying to survive. Thaleen opened her eyes and froze. A human. She pulled Mira closer, fearing the worst. But Daniel raised both hands and removed his helmet. His face was tired, eyes kind. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. "Let me help." She didn't speak, only stared. But the child's body was so cold, and this man, he didn't look like a killer. Daniel knelt down, opening his emergency pack. He pulled out a thermal blanket and wrapped it around both of them. Then he placed a heat cube between their hands. Slowly, warmth returned to their fingers. Mira whimpered softly, then fell asleep in her mother's arms. Thaleen looked at the man again. He was a stranger, a human. But in that moment, he was also a savior. She didn't know his name, his purpose, or his past. But he had given them warmth. And right now, that was enough. Outside, the storm kept screaming, but inside the cave, 3 lives sat close, no longer enemies, not yet friends, just survivors sharing the same cold breath. The war had taken so much from everyone. But deep in the snow, something new had begun. Not fire, not hate, just a quiet act of saving. And that, sometimes, was stronger than any weapon. Daniel stayed close to the cave entrance, watching the storm. The wind outside was strong, sharp, and loud. Inside, the warmth from his emergency heater made a small circle of comfort. He didn't move much, careful not to startle the alien woman or her child. Thaleen sat with her back against the icy wall, arms around Mira. The girl was sleeping now, wrapped in the blanket Daniel had given. Her small hands were no longer blue from cold. Color was slowly returning to her face. Thaleen's eyes stayed on the man who had brought them heat. She didn't trust him, not yet, but she could not deny the truth. He had saved her daughters. Life. Daniel reached into his supply bag and took out a ration pack. It wasn't much, just a small food bar and some water. He placed it carefully on the snow between them and then backed away. Thaleen didn't touch it at first. She looked at him, her violet eyes tired but alert. "I don't want anything from you," he said gently. "It's just food." She slowly picked up the bar, broke it in half, and gave the first piece to Mira, who had just opened her eyes. The child ate slowly, chewing like it hurt. Thaleen ate the rest, one small bite at a time. Daniel sat back and tried not to stare. This was the first time he had seen an alien so close without armor or weapons. Her skin glowed faintly in the dim light. Her clothes were torn but covered. Her hair was long and tangled, silver like frozen moonlight. She looked fragile, yet something about her told him she had survived more than he could imagine. "Who are you?" he asked softly. Halen hesitated. Her voice was rough, dry. "Thaleen," she said. "My daughter is Mira." Daniel nodded. "I'm Daniel. I was a medic before the fighting reached this side of the mountains." Thaleen's eyes narrowed slightly. "A soldier? I was," he admitted. "But not now. I just want to find safety. For all of us." She didn't respond. Trust was not something she had anymore. Too many promises had been broken. Too many humans had brought pain. But Mira was breathing again. That meant something. The snowstorm outside showed no signs of stopping. Daniel stood and adjusted the entrance, stacking rocks to block more wind. Then he used a portable heat pad to melt some clean snow in a container. He passed the warm water to Thaleen. She took it, her fingers brushing his glove for just a moment. Mira leaned into her mother, looking at Daniel with wide, curious eyes. "He's warm," she whispered. Thalen touched her hair gently. "Yes, he is." They sat in silence for a while. Three beings from two different worlds, brought together by cold and chance. The cave was still dark, but the shadows no longer felt so dangerous. A small warmth, both real and invisible, had started to grow between them. Daniel broke the silence. "Do you know if there's a village nearby? A place not destroyed?" Thaleen shook her head. "Most were burned. Some hid underground, but I don't know which ones still survive." Daniel looked down at his scanner. The battery was low. He had to move soon or risk being stuck. But he couldn't leave them, not now. "Not like this," he looked up. "If I take you with me, would you come?" Thaleen stared at him. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally she asked, "Why?" "Because no one should die cold," Daniel answered. Thaleen looked at her daughter. Mira's small hands were wrapped around the last piece of food. She smiled just a little. And in that moment, Thaleen gave a silent nod. The storm was still strong, but something inside the cave had changed. Not just the air, not just the temperature, but something deeper. A silent bond between strangers. Fragile but real, the war outside would continue. But in this small cave, a soldier, an alien mother, and her child had found something the war had forgotten: kindness. The storm finally began to slow. Hours passed before the wind stopped howling and the snow softened to a quiet fall. The world outside the cave turned white and still again, but the cold remained sharp in the air. Daniel stood near the edge of the cave, testing the snow with his boot. It had stopped piling deep. That was good. But the longer they stayed, the harder it would be to find help. Supplies were low. His scanner had only enough charge left for one more use. He turned and looked at Thaleen and Mira. The child was sitting up now, holding the heat pad in her small hands. Thaleen still looked tired, but her body wasn't shaking anymore. The color in her cheeks was slowly returning. Survival had taken every ounce of her strength. But there was still something alive in her eyes now, something that wasn't there. "Before, we should move," Daniel said. "Before it gets dark again." Thaleen hesitated. "Where will we go?" Daniel tapped his device. I have one last scan. If it picks something up, we follow it. If not, we keep walking. But I won't leave you behind." Thaleen didn't answer right away. She held Mira close and looked out into the white world. For so long she had been alone, hiding, running. She had learned not to trust. But this human had not asked anything from her. Not even her name at first, and Mira. Mira had smiled for the first time in days. They packed quickly. Daniel wrapped extra cloth around Mira's hands and feet. Then he gave Thaleen his outer coat. She tried to refuse, but he insisted. "You need it more than I do," he said simply. When they stepped out into the snow, Mira gasped. The light was bright, almost blinding. Everything looked the same, flat, white, endless. But now they had each other. Daniel turned on the scanner. A soft hum, a green light, then a beep. Faint but clear, life signal. South, less than 10 kilometers. It could be a village. It could be shelter. Or it could be another trap. He didn't say that part out loud. "This way," he said. They walked together, step by step through the snow. Mira rode on Daniel's back, wrapped in the coat, arms around his neck. She was light, like a feather. Thaleen walked beside him, still unsure, but moving forward. Hours passed. The snow was deep in some places, flat in others. They followed the scanner's direction, even when the path looked wrong. They didn't speak much. Breathing was hard. But every few steps, Daniel would glance at Mira, who gave him a sleepy smile. That kept him going. Once, Thaleen stumbled. Her legs were still weak. Daniel reached out without a word and helped her stand. She looked at him, breathing hard. "You should leave us," she whispered. "We're slowing you down." He shook his head. "I didn't save you to leave you now." She stared at him for a moment longer, then nodded and kept walking. Just before sunset, they saw something in the distance. A shape? A tower? No, a small structure, half buried in snow. It looked broken, abandoned. Daniel raised the scanner again. Still beeping. The signal was coming from that direction. He pulled out his binoculars. Through the lens he saw something movement. A solar light flickered near the roof. Smoke. Not much, but real. "Someone's there," he said. "We're close." Thaleen looked at Mira, then back at the smoke. Her lips trembled. Not from cold this time, but from hope. They pressed on. Faster now. The cold still bit their skin. Their feet still dragged. But the weight of fear had become lighter. Because just ahead, a new chance was waiting, and this time, they would not face it alone. The shelter was made of old metal sheets, half buried in snow and time. It didn't look like much, but to Daniel, Thaleen, and little Mira, it was a castle. The roof leaned on one side. The walls were dented, but there was smoke rising from a pipe. That meant warmth. That meant life. Daniel knocked twice on the metal door. No answer. He waited, then knocked again, louder. Inside, something moved. Footsteps, then silence. The door didn't open. Thaleen stood behind him, holding Mira close. Her heart raced. She was afraid. Not of the cold this time, but of people. Strangers. Would they be kind? Would they turn them away? Or worse? Daniel knocked one last time. Then he spoke, firm but calm. "We're not enemies. There's a child with us. We only need shelter." Few seconds passed. Then the door creaked open, just a little. A large eye peeked out. Then a voice, rough and tired. "Human? And an alien?" Daniel nodded. "They're not soldiers, just a mother and daughter." The voice didn't answer immediately. Then came the sound of bolts unlocking. The door opened wide. An older alien male stood there, wearing thick, patched-up clothing. His fur had gray streaks, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. Behind him stood another woman, alien like Thaleen, but holding a small child of her own. The old male stepped aside. "Come in." Quickly, before the cold returns. They entered. The air inside was dry but warm. A fire pit sat in the middle, surrounded by broken chairs and old crates. The walls were scratched and bent, but it was safe. Thaleen helped Mira sit near the fire. The warmth touched their skin, and for the first time, Mira closed her eyes not from pain, but from comfort. Daniel gave the older man a nod. "Thank you," the man shrugged. "We help who we can, human or not." The other woman brought a small bowl of soup, handing it carefully to Thaleen. She smiled gently. "Your daughter should be all right now." Thaleen looked down, her voice almost a whisper. "Thank you." They sat quietly for a while, eating, resting, letting the cold leave their bones. Daniel spoke with the old man. Learning that this shelter was once an old outpost from before the war, a few survivors had turned it into a hidden safe house. They had little, but they shared it. Later that night, Mira fell asleep in a soft blanket near the fire. Thaleen sat beside her, eyes watching the flames, her body finally beginning to relax. Daniel sat on the other side, arms crossed, deep in thought. She looked at him and spoke softly. "You could have left us." Daniel didn't look at her. "I couldn't." "Why?" she asked. "You don't even know us." He finally turned. "Because I've seen enough people die. I couldn't let it happen again, not when I could stop it." Her eyes softened. "You're different from the others." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe I'm just tired of war." There was silence again, but it wasn't heavy. It was calm. In the corner, the older alien man lit a small lantern and smiled faintly at the warmth between the three strangers. Outside, the snow fell quietly again, but this time it was not a threat. Inside, a human, an alien woman, and her child had found something stronger than survival. They had found the beginning of trust. The days passed slowly in the shelter. Snow still fell outside, but the inside was calm. Firelight filled the room each night, and for the first time in weeks, Mira played. She laughed quietly with the other alien child, drawing shapes in the ash near the fire with her finger. Thaleen watched her daughter with a soft smile. It had been so long since Mira had smiled. The child's laughter echoed like music in the metal walls. That sound alone was enough to make all the pain worth it. Daniel spent his days helping around the shelter, repairing leaks, fixing broken lights, even finding a frozen power cell nearby and carefully charging it. The older alien man, who introduced himself as Coral, had begun to trust him. So had the other survivors, but peace never lasted long. One afternoon, while Daniel and Coral were checking supplies outside the shelter, Mira screamed. Thaleen rushed out to find her daughter hiding behind the fire barrel, shaking. Mira pointed with her small hand toward the hill. Smoke, but not the soft smoke of a home. This smoke was thick black, rising like a warning into the sky. Coral looked through his old scope. "Gunships," he muttered. "Scouts, maybe scavengers, maybe worse." Thaleen felt her chest tighten. "Are they human?" "No," Daniel answered. "Not mine. They're war scavengers. They raid the dead, sometimes the living." Mira held her mother tightly. Her voice cracked. "Will they take me again?" Thaleen froze. Again Daniel turned toward her, his voice low. "What does she mean, again?" Thaleen didn't answer at first. Her arms wrapped around Mira like a shield. Finally she whispered, "A month ago, raiders found us, took us to a camp. They used us for work, for food. I escaped one night when the fence broke during a blizzard. I ran and never looked back." Daniel's jaw clenched. He looked toward the black smoke again. "If they follow the old paths, they'll come here." Coral nodded. "We can't fight them." Daniel checked his gear. A single pistol, a knife, 2 charges. "Not enough. I can slow them down," he said. "If I head them off, lead them away, maybe you can escape north. There's a safe zone 20 kilometers from here, a human-alien ceasefire base." Thaleen stepped forward, You'll die. Daniel met her eyes. Not if I'm lucky. Thalene's hands trembled. You saved us. Don't throw that away. I'm not, he said. I'm giving it meaning. Mira tugged on his sleeve, her small voice firm. Please don't leave us. Daniel knelt in front of her. I won't let them hurt you again. That's a promise. Thalene watched the human closely. He had no reason to stay. No reason to fight, but here he was risking everything for them. I'm coming with you, she said suddenly. No, Daniel said. You have to keep Myra safe. She shook her head. We're done hiding. If we run forever, we'll never be free. Coral stepped in. I'll lead the others north. If you truly mean to distract them, don't die doing it. Daniel looked between them and finally nodded. We move at first light. That night, Thalene sat by the fire holding Myra close. The child had fallen asleep again, breathing slowly. Peacefully. Daniel sat across from her, sharpening his knife. I was taught to see your kind as threats, he said. But you've done nothing but survive. Thalene stared at the flames. And I was taught that humans only destroy. But you brought my child back from the edge. He looked at her quietly. Let's end this cycle. She nodded. Outside, the stars were cold. But inside, two souls from different worlds were preparing not for war, but for something far harder. A fight for peace. Dawn broke slowly over the snow-covered land. Pale light touched the icy trees and the frozen ground. Everything looked calm, but the danger was growing closer. The smoke in the distance had moved. The scavenger group was on the move, rolling machines, cruel faces, and weapons ready for whatever they found. Daniel, Thalene, and Coral stood by the shelter door. The others had already begun their journey north under Coral's guidance, taking Mira and the other child with them. They left quietly, wrapped in every layer they could find. Coral would lead them to the ceasefire zone. That was their only hope. Daniel adjusted the strap of his weapon. He looked out at the land, then at Thalene beside him. She wore extra layers. One of Daniel's old jackets hanging loosely over her alien frame. She looked ready, tired, but ready. This doesn't have to end in blood, Daniel said. Ian nodded. But if it does, we'll face it standing. They didn't speak much after that. They had no time to waste. Daniel set a trap near the path. A flare bond tied to a wire. Not to kill, only to scare. They moved quickly, leaving clear tracks. In the snow. The plan was simple. Draw the raiders' attention away from the fleeing survivors. It didn't take long. A low hum filled the air, then a growl. The machines were coming. Metal legs, skimmers, shouting voices. Daniel triggered the flare. A bright light exploded behind them, and the sound echoed like thunder across the ice. The raiders stopped, confused. Then they saw the footprints and followed. Daniel and Thalene ran. They darted through the frozen forest, over ridges and across a narrow river. The enemy chased them hard, but not smart. Shots fired wildly into the trees. One missed Daniel by inches. Another scorched Thalene's jacket, but she kept running. Finally, they reached an old crash site, broken steel and rusted remains of a downed ship. Daniel had scouted it days ago. It had only one purpose now. Delay. He and Thalene ducked inside. Daniel placed his final charge near the wreckage entrance. Then he crouched, breathing hard, weapon aimed. The scavengers came in fast. 4 of them, not soldiers, just hunters of weakness. Daniel waited. The first stepped over the charge. He pressed the trigger. A burst of light, smoke and heat. Screams. Chaos. Thalene moved fast, grabbing a dropped weapon, firing a warning shot into the air. The others panicked and ran. Only one stayed, raising his weapon. Daniel fired first. The raider dropped. Silence followed, cold, quiet. Then only the sound of wind. Thalene lowered her weapon slowly. Her hands shook, not from cold, but from the Memory of what she had just done. Daniel touched her shoulder gently. "It's over." "No," she said. "It's only beginning. But at least now we're free to start." They left the wreckage behind. Hours passed before they found the trail again, deep footprints and a piece of cloth. Mira had dropped to mark the path. Just before dusk, they reached the ceasefire zone. Human and alien guards stood together at the outpost gates. It was real. Coral waved from inside. Mira rushed forward, her little arms reaching for her mother. Thaline fell to her knees, holding her child tightly. No more running, no more freezing. They were safe now. Daniel stood beside them, his body tired but his spirit quiet. A human officer walked over. "You brought them out?" Daniel nodded. "They're not enemies, they never were." The officer looked at Thaline and Mira. "They're welcome here. All of them." That night, in a warm room under real lights, Mira curled into her mother's side and slept with peace on her face. Thaline looked across the room at Daniel, who smiled and gave her a quiet nod. She smiled back. War had brought pain. Cold had nearly taken their lives. But kindness, a single moment of human kindness, had started something new, a rescue, a bond, a future. And for the first time in a long time, both human and alien dreamed not of survival, but of tomorrow.